It's good to be here. Boy, he said the 9/11 parade or something. You know, we thought we left with plenty of time to spare that would give us at least 45 minutes or more ahead of time, and we barely made it on time. Of course, we didn't even go through Atlanta, and the traffic was terrible, but praise God, we're here. I want to thank Dr. Gary and Jason for helping us at the last minute to kind of scramble and change. You know, to hear about a mission report is a whole lot more fun with pictures, amen? And so we don't want to, we want to go as quick as we can here. To pack 6 weeks into 60 minutes or so is going to be a little bit of a feat, but I think you'll enjoy it. We've shared a few times the Lord has given us that privilege, and we didn't have anybody complain yet. So anyway, this last summer, my family, there's my wife Rhonda and our 3 youngest children, myself, another young gentleman that lives by us here where we are back in Alabama, over near where Doug and Robin and the farm are, came with us. There was also, now that's interesting. We have one picture right here and a different one up here. I don't know how that... There's some operator error, I'm sure, on a lot of what's happening here. Which way do I point this thing? Well, here we are at the... maybe turned around this way. Anyway, so with timing of everything, it worked out to this summertime for school and everything. We decided to make this trip. We planned it back in the early turn of the year. Actually, we had made a matter of prayer of... if the Lord would have us to do something like this. We have had the privilege to do a few of these different kind of trips. The back one here is working, but the front ones aren't in sync. Okay. That's okay. We had prayed about it, and actually, as we've talked about it several times, it had been a little while since we had been on any kind of a mission trip. And so as a family, we actually got down on the floor around the little table there in the living room, and we just prayed earnestly about it. And within a couple days of that prayer, just little prayers, discussion, and then we just made it a real official thing. God, if it's your will, open the door. I got an email, and so I emailed back. I actually called back because it sounded very much like a Macedonian-type call. And but because, you know, I'm like Gideon. I need 2 or 3 fleeces, you know. And so I called and I said, is this what you have in mind? And the answer was resounding, that's exactly what we had in mind. Okay. Very good. So June 13, I want to start by reading a couple of scriptures if we could. The first one here, and I should have already done this, right, while they were getting ready. Mark 16:15. And he said unto them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And Matthew 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. And I thought, you know, there's a mission field around us everywhere. But sometimes we get caught up in the forest and the trees and not being able to tell the difference between the two, and I can't remember which one goes first. And so sometimes that's why we've liked to do these opportunities, is to kind of refocus, get a perspective, a different perspective, and it kind of helps us appreciate what we have and how we can bless others. So on June 13, I believe it was, we packed up. We ended up having 16 pieces of luggage because when you're going to someplace like Ecuador, which I noticed Robin put Central, it's actually South America, right there by Peru and Colombia. The easiest way to get stuff down there and to assure it gets there is to send it. So he had a lot of extra stuff sent to us. We were able to carry on to, check in to, and plus personal luggage. So we were able to bring a lot more. So I think we had ended up with 15 or 16 different pieces of luggage there. And of course, you got to be very careful how you pack it, because carry-ons, you can't, no liquids over this and all that. You know, there's lots of TSA regulations. So we packed up, we headed out. We were supposed to leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, which would put us there at 2 in the afternoon in Quito, Ecuador. I wanted at all costs to avoid any type of night flights because I knew that, you know, my wife had some issues with health, and that was not a good way to start off a trip, having to fly all night or something like that. And so we got better tickets, upgraded a little bit, so we could avoid all that kind of stuff. So we were supposed to leave at 7, get there at 5. Our plane out of Atlanta didn't actually even leave until almost 5 o'clock that afternoon. And so we had lots of extra time to run back and forth. When they discovered a big maple syrup that had gotten on one of the carry-ins, we were actually able to run back, and they were able to pull our luggage out, retrieve it, let us do that, or pay the extra $200, and we didn't want to do that. So that was kind of a blessing. We made it to Miami. We got there. We ran from one end. We got off at D60, which is the farthest terminal at one end. The next flight out was at D2. That's the next one at the other end. So we rode the shuttle and ran to get to an empty waiting room and no airplane. So we went back to customer service, and in Atlanta they told us that most likely was going to happen. But don't worry, there's a flight at midnight you can catch. Things are not the way we wanted to go. So we went to customer service, and they said, yes, there's a flight at midnight, and it's full. Let me see, though. This is Monday. We can get you out of here at Thursday. I'm like, to sit in Miami from Monday to Thursday? Surely there's got to be. I'm sorry. I said, what about Delta or Continental or any of these other people? Well, we can, and they did all their stuff. We can't get you on any flight until Thursday. So what do you do in a situation like that? Well, I fret, but my wife says, let's pray. So we went from here to you folks right there in the airport and had prayer. About 10 minutes later, they called and said, Mr. Brown, they've turned the plane around, and they're bringing the plane back to gate 14, and they're going to reopen the gate. Has anybody ever heard of that before? We hadn't either. They brought the plane in. Turns out they had taxied out, and there was some kind of problem, and so they had to get a different plane. So there was a lot of people on that plane that were a little disappointed, but we were pretty happy. And so we got on that plane and ended up sitting for another hour, and then they said, well, we haven't told you anything because we were hoping to have some good news before we tell you the bad news that this plane is not going to Ecuador. It's not set up for flying over the water or in the mountains. So we'll let you know when another plane comes along. Needless to say, we finally got another plane. In the process, we ended up losing the video camera that one of the young gentlemen that went with us had left us on one of these planes, and so we prayed about that. We went back and found somebody while we had all this extra time to sit in Miami, and now we're scheduled to leave at midnight out of Miami. And so we actually went back in the airplane, was still sitting there. That plane hadn't left, and the camera was still sitting right there on the seat. So we were pretty thankful. We'd show you some video clips too, but they took me too much time. So we finally got to Quito, Ecuador at 4 o'clock. Here we are on the plane. Finally, I don't know which plane this was. 4 o'clock in the morning, the one thing we wanted to avoid, ended up happening for us. We arrive at Quito at 4 in the morning. Needless to say, everybody's a little bit on the tired side. This trip was actually a health emphasis trip. Well, I'll tell you this first. We're in Quito. We had some other people that were meeting us, so we ended up taking a tour around the city on this open bus. It was kind of a neat place. While you guys were having those 100-degree days, temperatures down there ranged from in the low 60s at night to the low 70s at daytime. And so it was very nice. You can see, pretty thing. You'll see in the background there a basilica. The tour took us over there, and we took a little tour of that. Catholicism, as you may know, the news is even the Pope went down here just recently to Ecuador, had a big speech. So this was one of those cathedrals that we went in. Just wanted to give you a few pictures. You know, we don't see that kind of stuff as much in this country, at least around this part of the country. This is in one of those big tall towers. It was kind of interesting. You got a pretty neat view of the city. The kids like that. Here we are looking over the city of Quito, Ecuador, waiting for the rest of our group to get there. This was at the equator. While you're in Ecuador, which means equator, we thought we would got to see that. This is called kissing across hemispheres. So that was kind of fun. There is a red line there at the equator. They painted one, so you know where it's at. The rest of our group got there, and we flew on to, we were scheduled to fly from north Quito's in the north, and the mountains to the southeast, Loja. The first flight was really bad. We made it very late. The second one got in terribly late, so we're hoping maybe the third flight would get there on time. So we flew down there and really enjoyed the flight. And it was only supposed to be a 40-minute flight. That was better than the 16 hours drive. But we kept flying and flying and flying, and we kept seeing this other airplane out the window above us. And my wife said, something's not right here. They finally said, well, there's a fire down there, and so we can't land the plane. They took us over to Guayaquil, where we fueled up and took us back to Quito. So here we had to spend some more time in Quito. We ended up meeting a lady at the far end of the picture here. She'll come. We'll tell you a little bit about her later. But she joined us from Kentucky, stayed another night there, and then finally made it down to where we were going. Now, this trip that we're going on is there's different kind of mission trips. Whenever you're sharing the gospel, there's a few different aspects. It was somewhat of a health emphasis. We ended up doing things, and you'll get to hear more about these as my family will share. There was cooking schools, we called it Supper Club, where they have a health presentation afterward. English classes that we did. Health expos, like health screening, things. We had couple music programs. There was a VBS, or they called it Youth Week, like a vacation Bible school type thing for 5 days. We had home visitations that we went around the community and did, and went to an orphanage. And then there was a lot of other stuff. The people that we went with, this is where we ended up staying. The house on your left is where some very good friends of ours, Don and Sherry Yohe, live. And the house on the right is what they were building as a little lifestyle center. So a lot of what we're sharing, Talking Walk, should be able to relate to, because I know that's a new program that you guys have here too. And so a lot of what we did in between preparations and stuff for some of these other things was, this house was still under construction, so there was a lot of cleaning windows and pulling stickers off and getting dishes and stocking it with the linens and towels and all that, and getting everything washed and stuff put together and cleaned. And so it was very nice accommodations compared to a lot of what you might see or have seen. This is kind of, you can see the two houses there. They look like they're side by side in the previous picture, but there's a little bit of an elevation difference here. And this is we're just in the mountains here, about 5,300 feet up. This was our house. You can still see the construction. My family actually had the whole upstairs with the young gentleman that came with us. There were two other families downstairs. And then the house below on the right is where our host, the Yohes, stayed. Just briefly, this is Mr. Don Yohe, his wife, Miss Sherry. They were directors at Living Springs Retreat, which is right near where we live down there. It's another lifestyle center, little health retreat, kind of like a Uchee Pines or a Wildwood type thing, but much smaller scale. It has made for 10 guests. So they were the directors there, and so we worked alongside them for about 3 years. And Doug Platt helped us build a house down there, and we sold the house, and they bought the house. And they lived with us for a little while in the house, and then we sold the house to them, and then we lived with them in their house for a while. And so we did have worships together and meals together, and we interacted a lot. We worked together for a few years together after that. And we have a great deal of respect for them. They were a real blessing where we are in Alabama, and they've done tremendous things. And so they're the ones that invited us to come down. And just a few more pictures of what, that one was. One thing that we did, just briefly, kind of getting into a little bit more about the trip, the local people, this little community where we were at was called Chiquille. It had a population of maybe 60 or 70 people. There was nothing in the thing except for a little church that was not even the size of just where these chairs are right here, and a little school that may be a little bit bigger, about as big as this rug here, and that's it. But every Sunday evening, they would get together and play volleyball. So that's what we did. We kind of interacted with the community, kind of break down some of the barriers. Some of the community next to that had some problems. Joshua was going to mention a little bit, where they actually had gringos. That can be Europeans or Americans, that were kidnapping children and harvesting body parts and stuff as of little as 2 years ago. So there was a lot of there's a little bit of a stigma there, but the Yohes have done a lot, and so just our interaction was kind of helpful. So we would get out there, interact with them, playing games on the Sundays. This was our dining room table. We would sit out and look at that view, which was really pretty. Again, the weather was really nice. This was not the rainy season, so it was a lot of fun. And right below the dining room, they had right where we were at, on the property, there was a waterfall. Actually, there was 5 waterfalls right there where we were. So it was really neat. We'd spend not a lot, but whenever there was a free time, usually in the morning, Rhonda and I would take a walk down there. Sabbath afternoons, we'd go down there and see the waterfall. It had actually an outhouse there with running water at the waterfall. That's a good thing to have at your waterfall. And here is the old gazebo where Swanee's pointing out to us. While we were there, they actually kind of, there's not a lot of tree huggers with trees like this. This is a sable tree, very common down there. It's kind of like an icon. But that's also down at the waterfall. I was just going to mention, you'll see they remodeled all that, and so it's kind of neat. A lot of time in worship, a lot of time in prayer, morning and evening together. You can see the little banners and stuff kind of in the background there, the little health expo things. We use those at different events too, promoting like the 8 laws of health and things like that. And a lot of cleaning, of course, cleaning the thing. It was also, because it was not the rainy season, it was dusty, so every day a lot of sweeping, a lot of ironing with a lot of the curtains that all got put up while we were there. Also, we wore aprons every time we had events, and so there was a lot of that kind of stuff. Again, with the emphasis on health, there was a lot of nutrition is a big part of that. You're living in an area down here where there's a lot of stuff. It's kind of interesting to see citrus and stuff just growing in the mountains. We think of Florida and California and Arizona and stuff like that. A lot of bananas. So we would go out and harvest a lot of that stuff, which is all around. Carrots. Little plug for Toyota there. That was our main source of transportation. Back and forth and around. This is our young friend there on the left. His name is Jared Kirkland. Just some of the different harvests that we did. We'd throw the Doug sweet potatoes. They're big old, almost bowling ball sized sweet potatoes there. This is a typical breakfast. We'd have 6 or 8 or 9 pieces of fruit, bananas and papayas, and it was not mango season. We were very unfortunate, but a lot of papaya, pineapples, bananas, oranges, and then some other things like chirimoyas and pitahayas and things like that are not as common here, granadillas, and there's some of those like sour sops and different things. Banana bread, there's a lot of health emphasis down there, so you can get gluten-free and a lot of stuff like that. That was Sabbath morning breakfast down there. Wasn't it the granola down there was made by the Adventist people, which is kind of interesting, in the regular grocery stores. Just another view here, a couple things. That's the waterfall. These are Sabbath afternoon shots. A lot of times we go hiking up in the mountain. You could just go straight up or straight down. Coconut, we had a lot of those. We'd get the juice, and Rhonda spent a lot of time online. Those are the aprons that we would wear. Swanee would iron them. Rhonda would wash them for all the different events, which we had about 2 a week. Down there, you're not worried about seatbelts, so you can just pack as many people in as you want to. And we got about 9 or 10 or 12 in there, I think. With the little kids, they ended up getting about 20 of them in that same car. That was out the kitchen window one morning. You can see everything is terraced because of they got over 100 and some fruit trees planted there, but because of either straight up or straight down, everything gets terraced, and so you can see all the little grow beds behind the house and all the little terraces with fruit trees. It is a pretty fertile area. While we were there, we had our 21st anniversary, and so they made us a raw carrot cake. We had carrot cake 21 years before at our wedding, and so they made us one, and it was actually very good. This was Jeff and Nancy Rita they were on 3ABN for a lot of years as raw food chefs. They did a thing called Food for Thought. They were actually our cooks down there, so we had a lot of good eating while we were down there. Jeff now is in his back and legs and stuff are pretty bad, so when he wasn't using his walker or wheelchair, other people would play with him. Cactus trees on the Sabbath, we had a tire, and so we just threw a few little shots in there. That's the waterfall again. This is now, they came down there and remodeled that area where the gazebo was. They put a whole new thing in here with a concrete floor and tiled it, and they built a big table, and so it's kind of a neat big old gazebo thing now, and they have a lot of the community events is what they're scheduling. Even since we left, they finished it, and that small community, they've brought more and more people in. You'll hear a little bit more about that. It's a little bit of the peripheral stuff here. But so there we were down there. That was another Sabbath afternoon. right before we left to come back home. This is another waterfall at the top where we'd go every morning. We'd have prayer together, Rhonda and I, and it was just some, good hiking because it's either straight up or straight down, good cardiovascular. This is off our deck. When we first got there wasn't any rails or anything, but by the end they had tiles and rails, and it ended up getting painted and everything. So it gives you a little bit. This is that Catholic church I was telling you about, just the only public building in the whole community. That was the outhouse a little ways away, and it was a very scary situation. That's the electrical meter. We just threw that in. Jared's dad was an electrician, and wires laying everywhere was no big deal. Doug Platt would find that. Did house visitation. Swanee will share about that here. That was one of the house. The mama pig sat on its baby. Just the Sabbath afternoon. And a few more, lots of flowers down there. We enjoyed those, and we just wanted to share a little of that. We did take a couple times, there was a potter there, and for $10 you got to do all this pottery, and so we went and did that and made some stuff. They'll bring it to us because it didn't get fired when we were down there, but a good object lesson there, and it was kind of a neat experience on the side to do the potter's wheel if anybody's ever done something like that. Okay, I told you food was a big part of it. This is the broccoli heads, the broccoli brothers. Anyway, we did a lot of preparation. Supper Club, I'll just start to mention here, was one of the things we call it. There at Living Springs, we've been doing it for almost 5.5 years now. Sherry Yohe started it there, and we started it here in Ecuador. It was a big hit. Took a lot of food preparation, a lot of time in the kitchen, preparing healthy things. You'd be surprised in a place where you can grow a lot and where it's very readily available, how poor people will go ahead and just eat guinea pigs as a staple instead, and all this fruit. They cut down all there's a lot of citrus and a lot of, bananas and stuff come out of there, but they don't seem to understand it. And so that's a lot of the problems we encountered as a result of diet, as I'm sure you know. Here, this was right before we got ready to serve at our first supper club. We actually we did a little bit of mouth-to-mouth advertising, and we ended up having 44 people come out from the community, which we thought was pretty good. So here they are eating. That picture was a little blurry, but I wanted just to see them getting their food, eating. There was a little baby, and Jeff enjoyed holding it while the mama ate. And after the presentation, this gentleman standing up here, the Spanish gentleman on the far left there, he's actually the agronomist or the agriculture person for that community. He's also the carpenter who is building a lot of the homes there. He also is the mayor of that community, and he also was very supportive on a lot of what we were doing. He would come over a day or two before. We would create a PowerPoint presentation on the first one, I think, dealt with nutrition, and then how poor nutrition can cancer and diabetes and so many things are related, and how good nutrition can bring positive benefits. So he read through it, alcohol and different things, what it does, and he was like, wow, this is amazing. My people need to hear this stuff. And so he would go through, it's all in Spanish, of course, everything got translated to Spanish, and then he would read it, and then he would give the presentations, go through. And of course, they like this. Technology was great. This is you set up a projector and something like this, and everybody comes out because that's a pretty, in these little communities, there's, they don't even have televisions or anything. And so he would go through and give the whole presentation, and then at the end, he would go back through mentally and give a recap of a 45-minute presentation, point by point by point, all from memory, and sum it up. It was very amazing what the man was able to do. And the people, from the time we got there, that was one of the first things we did was the supper club. Till the time we left, 6 weeks later, they said the alcohol consumption had dropped off drastically in that community, and a lot of people were wanting to do better. So we said, well, praise the Lord. That was what it was all about. And of course, we always ended on the spiritual emphasis. It was easy to talk about God. Everybody's professedly Catholic, but they only have a priest that comes once a month to do a mass, so that the most of them are used to going to church once a month, so it's not that big a deal. But there is a spirituality. It's ignorant in a lot of ways, but just a couple more pictures of the program that we did. They actually did a special music. Caleb and Swanee did, and that was really enjoyed. I think they did the Lord's Prayer and for him. Had a local person who was on, what was that thing? Ecuador's Got Talent. We weren't sure about the talent, but the people liked it. So he did good. Just some more of the folks that showed up. We had 2 different supper clubs. One last thing too, the market, we would go there once a week. You saw all kind of stuff. It was a very colorful market, pretty neat, lots of fruits and vegetables, and we would stock up on, I couldn't tell you all the amazing things that grow just right there. But we were really impressed with it. It was pretty neat, and it was obviously a cultural experience as well. These are all little chickens. They're all just packed in there. People have chickens everywhere down there. A lot of the flowers which grow. And if you notice, like Ecuador is the rose capital of the world. I don't know if you knew that or not. Of course, a lot of pineapples, a lot of bananas and kiwis we had down there. Just a lot of the flowers and stuff. So at this time, Caleb is going to share, and we're just going to go through and tell some of those specifics of the actual mission itself, what we were doing. I kind of just gave you a little bit of an overview, just a little bit about Ecuador. And so I'm going to invite Caleb to come up and go through and share a couple of things. He's going to talk to you about some of the English schools, the music programs, and the health expos.
All right, good morning, everybody. Okay, which way?
Right.
Oh, okay. Figure out how this works someday. So my dad really likes to talk about the view and how pretty everything was, and it is a very beautiful part of the world, but my view was not quite as spectacular. Because I am bilingual, English, Spanish, I spent a lot of time in the office doing translating for different events and preparing materials to be distributed or to be used in events. So my view was not as impressive. But I guess it's kind of funny. I always look at my dad and my professors and think, wow, you have such messy offices. Well, when I grow up, I'm going to have a really clean office. But all my best resolutions are not working out, right? But I spent a lot of time in the office working and getting ready for different events, preparing material, like I said. And one of those was the English class that we would do. Now, Ms. Sherry Yowie started this as an outreach to the community, but it's also helping to prepare children for high school entrance exams. So not only is it great outreach, it's a wonderful way to help kids get ready for high school. So I would help to put on these classes, which was a real great opportunity and a lot of fun. So just do basic things like colors, animals, family, opposites, basic verbs. And then we use a lot of games to reinforce what we did. So like this game is we would write stuff on the board, and then whoever hits it first with the fly swatter gets the point. And that was fun because it's an action game, so right. The bells, you probably have seen the little bells. That was a good way to teach colors and also English vocab using songs. And we would also use like bingo for numbers and different things. And they really enjoyed the games, and it was a good way to learn. This was the last night, the group that had come. And I was unfortunately not there because I was sick. I averaged getting sick about once a week. Pretty bad, but it was still worth it. In addition to English class, did a lot with the health expo. So this was our first health expo. They're in the little community of Chiquil where we were staying. And you can see our group here. This man on the far left, was the mayor. His name is Don Carlos. Now his name is not actually Don, it's Carlos Jimenez. But Don in Spanish is a title it's like a title, Mr., Sir. It didn't work out too well for Mr. Yowie though, because they tried to call him Don. So he's like, I'll pass, just say something else. But we had our group there, Miss Sherry's next to him. On the far side, you see, far right, the lady and her husband. She's actually a doctor, an Ecuadorian trained doctor. And just recently, Loma Linda University went down to Ecuador and put on a seminar presenting the 8 laws of health. And she attended. And so now she's really on fire about natural medicine. So in addition to her conventional practice, she is starting to promote natural healing. And so she came and volunteered her time at our health expo. She's a good friend of Miss Sherry's, to talk to the people that came through, which is great because a lot of these people have never seen a doctor before. So it's a sad situation, I guess. We don't have a lot of pictures from this health expo because it was very, very busy. They told us that probably you'll have about 80 people showed up, and then over 100 ended up coming. So, I mean, where did they come from? It's just like out of the woodwork. But we do have a few. Miss Nancy Riedesol was a nurse, so she would do the blood glucose check. My mom doing blood pressure. Chef Riedesol, Chef Jeff, he's also a massage therapist, so Swanee worked with him doing massage, biological health age. And then as kind of a little incentive to go through the Health Expo, we had samples at the end. And so Marco Grifo, who is an immigrant from Switzerland and married to the doctor, and his girls were helping with that. And this man is actually the manager of a hotel called Jardín Escondido, or the Hidden Garden, in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And so they invited us to come to their, to their hotel, which is a very nice garden area, and to put on another health expo. So we were able to go down there, and this community has a lot more immigrants from Europe and the United States who are trying to be green. Vilcabamba, Ecuador used to be considered one of the blue zones. So a lot of times they're going down there for health benefits and whatever. So since they're already interested in health, you kind of use that, say, okay, we'll show you something even more. So this one was a little more laid back, so we'll have a few more pictures. We, of course, would start with registration, height, weight, and waist circumference for calculating body mass index, blood pressure. And blood pressure was also popular with the kids because not only was it painless, there was pipe cleaners. Blood glucose, again, Miss Nancy doing that. Joshua, and this lady is, I forgot her name, Diane, sorry. Miss Diane, and that's Miss Sherry's sister. So they were able to come down and join us, her and her husband. And so they're doing peak flow of the lungs and pulse ox. The Harvard step test, my dad was keeping everyone motivated to keep walking and keep your heart healthy. Massage, again, Swanee and Chef Jeff. Biological health age, again, using an analysis of your lifestyle to kind of judge how you're doing physically. And so I would work with the Spanish people, and then Pastor Jeff would work with the English speakers, so it's kind of nice. Again, Dr. Sonia. Her practice actually right there in her hotel that her husband manages, but she again volunteered her time to talk to the people as they came through and impart her knowledge to them. And I'm sure she picked up clientele, so it was good for her as well. And then Miss Sherry would end it with the spiritual aspect of kind of wrapping everything up that had been presented to them during their experience in the Health Expo. And it was really good because, she's a really pretty lady and she's bubbly and outgoing and exciting, and that's good because she was the one that has to say, you need to stop drinking alcohol and you need to stop smoking, you need to stop eating meat and guinea pigs and all these things. So she had the right personality for the job. And after this Health Expo was finished, we were able to present a music concert in this hotel. And of course, being a pianist, I was part of organizing that, which was another great experience, opportunity. Marco Grifo, he's from Switzerland, and this is his instrument. It's called a Han. He played that. It's a traditional Swiss instrument. It's a percussion instrument, but has melody, so it's really pretty. We don't have a lot of pictures, but then again, oh, that one's so dark. It was guitar, mandolin, and piano, a little more Appalachian flavor. Piano solos, and we don't have a picture, but Dr. Sonia, in addition to being a doctor, is a professional singer. She used to sing professionally with the Quito Orchestra, and but she gave up her music career because she said it was, it's leading her away from God. So she gave that up, and now she sings for God, and she has a beautiful voice, so she participated in our program as well. Swanee and Miss Sherry doing a duet. We had duets and solos, kind of a mix. And after we got done, this was kind of exciting. We got done with the kind of the planned program of the concert, and then a lot of the people from the audience came up and they said, it's been so long since we've had a good pianist here. Do you know this song, and do you know this song, and do you know this song? So we had a sing-along then for a while afterward, and that was a real fun experience to share and then also to have them share with us as well. And I would say that I guess one of the biggest things that I gained from this whole experience was learning that God gives us opportunities, but then he gives us those opportunities to share. And so, in the past, God's given me opportunities to become a musician and to become fluent in another language, but then he gives opportunities again to use those to share with other people and to be a blessing. And so that's, I guess, the biggest thing for me, and the biggest encouragement I would have for other people as I'm sharing is, even if opportunities seem small or insignificant, you never know where God can take you with those. So that's an encouragement for myself and for everyone. Take every opportunity, because you never know how God has planned for you to use that. Now, Joshua. Here's your clicker.
Okay. You do it right. Morning. Happy Sabbath. I'm going to be sharing with you a few of the things we had. They called it Youth Week Vacation Bible School type program. It was 5 days. They went over the days of creation. It was 3 hours in the morning. It would start out with the prayer, and then Caleb would do the Bible lesson. Then they would do the Bible memory verse. They had different verses. And then they would do singing. They learned Spanish songs. And they would do the handbells. Caleb showed they did it in English class as well. They had the handbells that were color-coded to know what kind of note you would play, I guess. And then they would do a healthy lunch. And then after that, my mom would direct a craft. They would do it to reinforce the Bible lesson. And then they would have like a game, like different games. They would play like fun games to top it all off, because, kids love games. And my dad told you about they had the other gringos had like harvested organs and done that. That was kind of a bad experience. You could tell they were a little bit reserved, but they came anyways. And they're quick. They'll forgive you if something like we didn't obviously do it, but they would friendly. They weren't. I mean, you could tell they were reserved, obviously, but the older children would always help and look out for the younger children, even if they weren't siblings. And they care for each other. They take care of each other. And at the last night that we had a thing you'll see in the pictures, my dad said 40-some people came for the supper club. Different amounts of people came. But for the last night of VBS, they had a program where they went over the things that they had. They had 70 people come. It was crazy, from both towns. And some of the games they were playing there. But the truth that we would share with them, they were so excited about it, to learn new things from the Bible that they had never seen before. They were so excited to experience that. And they have school there. I don't know what grade it's through. It's different than up here. We have 1 to 12 is high school, and then they some people go to college. And then, but down there, people would go from, I don't know, I think there was like 10 grades or something. But they had a little school there. There was a few people you'll see in the pictures that actually went to the college in Loja. But in English, this little boy's name translated to Stalin. I thought that was kind of interesting. But the last night, the mayor's son, he loves reading. He loves to read. And the last night of EBS, as kind of a reward, we gave him each of the children that came a Bible. And we heard just before we left that that little boy, every single night, he reads his Bible, good portions of it. Have to take it away from him to get him to go to bed. But it's just amazing. But everything, there was a Duck Duck Goose. That was probably next to a couple of the games we had at the end. We had water games at the end, but that was probably their most favorite game that we played down there. And that was some of the crafts that my mom helped them do. The first day they did a bookmark. It had a scripture verse on it. I think it was one of the memory verses. I don't know. But the second day, they did like they made a little frame for another memory verse that they would put in there. And the 5 days of creation, it was kind of irregular. They would have, like the first day they covered 2 or 3 days of creation. The second day they covered, it was irregular. But the last day they didn't do it. They did kind of the recreation at the end. I think that's what they did. I'm not exactly sure. But down there they play volleyball. My dad told you volleyball, but they don't use a volleyball. The net's a lot higher, and they use a soccer ball. And you know how hard soccer balls are. And it hurt really bad if you hit it wrong. Oh, wait, here, he was telling you, they fit all those kids in one car. A car that seats 8 people, they fit 21 people in. It was crazy. The car was squatting down there and squeaking whenever they came in. But they were stacking 3 and 4 kids high. They were standing behind the seat. It was amazing. The last day, they have a thing they call carnival. It's like a day of the year, one day a year, that they have games, and they're all water games. And this was the last day of VBS. We had the activity to be water games, and it's kind of some interesting pictures there. But they would take water with the sponge out of the big bucket and put it in a little container. And then that's Miss Sherry. She was playing. She came out. I don't know what she was looking like, but she was. It was fun. They all attacked her with water balloons and squirt guns, and that was the first day they had 20 kids. The second day they had, I don't know, the smallest we had was 19. I think the biggest we had was 37. But the last day, it was in the 20s, the low 20s or the high teens that we had. But the last day we had 36, was it? 36 kids that came. That was the last night they played the handbells. There were so many kids that they had to divide it up into 3 or 4 groups. The older, the middle, and then the young, from 3 to 5, and then from 5 to 8, and then from 8 to. It was interesting how they did it, but that's the mayor and his wife, and the mayor had this little Toyota truck, and the people would be hanging all over that truck whenever they would come in. That truck would go back several times to take people and go get people. But anyways, that was just a few of the things we did with VBS. And I believe Swanee's going to share.
Okay, I'm going to be sharing with you about home visitation. You may be wondering what home visitation is. Home visitation is where our mission group, we would go and spend time with people at their houses, kind of like going door to door. We went to 3 surrounding villages near our house. To our left up here was the village of Chiquil, and to the far right was the village of San Miguel, and where the picture is being taken was the village of Chinchilamaca. Once we would arrive at the house, we would pass out a sheet of paper. that had 3 songs, and we would sing with them. We had 2 guitars and a mandolin that would accompany us. Hospitality is very important to Ecuadorians. They would, when we would arrive at their homes, they would bring, try to make sure that everyone had a seat. So this one guy, he was from Holland, and he lives in this dome house, and that was us there singing with him. As you can see, they would bring all the chairs, and they would bring out blankets and lay them on the concrete benches to make sure everyone was comfortable. When we would get ready to leave, they always wanted to give you something, like they would give you oranges, or they would try to give you food, but you have to be careful down there because you don't know where the water came from, and you can get very sick if you drink it. This family, we got to know them down there. We went to their house, and they gave us this fruit salad, but we felt it was okay because you don't want to hurt their feelings, and it was just a fruit salad, and it was very good. Now this was an experience. We went to this one house, and they wanted to give us something, so they gave us, they're kind of like tamales, but not exactly like that. And they wanted us to eat it, and then they brought out this murky-looking drink, and we weren't sure where it came from, and they told us it was a tea, and we were very scared to drink it, but we didn't want to hurt their feelings, so we prayed and we drank it, and thankfully no one got sick from that event. We were all happy that we didn't get sick. Just before we left, my mom would let the children choose 3 stickers and 3 pipe cleaners, and we would invite them to Youth Week, which was VBS. Since we spent a lot of time at the homes the first week, we only made it to a few, but after Youth Week, we went and did home visitation the last 2 weekends we were there. It was really nice because we got to see kids that we had gotten to know during VBS. This little boy, he came, I think, every day, and he's holding a little card there that we gave him during that week. And the other boy that came with us on the trip, he would blow balloons for all the kids, and they would take them home. And he decorated the whole front of his house with the balloons that he got every week. Here's some more kids that we got to know. A few things stood out to me. First, the people live in such poverty. They have dirt floors, no windows. Many had guinea pigs and chickens running in their kitchens. They kind of keep all the animals in their house. Yet they were so happy and thankful. Second, in visiting the homes, I got to see how many kinds of medical needs they have. Like a 10-year-old girl had really bad birth defects, and a woman had a really bad cut and swollen hand. Probably the nearest hospital is like 40 minutes away to an hour. And people in wheelchairs and all ages with dental problems. All of this showed me how blessed we are and how we could be a blessing and help them by learning and taking what we learned back to them. Here's some pictures. Am I going the wrong direction? No, that's the poor thing. What? The pig, the mama sat on it and it like broke its front leg, something like that, and it was just sitting here. Yeah. That was that same family. Okay.
feel safer with mine written down. All right. Excuse me. David Livingstone was a great missionary. Oh, he couldn't go back home because he had to reach the next village. I admire him, even long for his spirit, as I cross off the days till I fly back. I'm so thankful that God can use anyone, even the faint of heart, because I believe some of my greatest experiences with God have been during mission opportunities. This again proved true very soon after landing in Ecuador. We had just experienced amazing providence and care, but then we had to travel by land. That meant driving on a 1.5-lane dirt road with a cliff up one side and a precipice down the other. I love heights from the bottom, but I'm terrified of drop-offs. After the 1.5-hour drive to our location, I told Todd I wasn't traveling that road again till I was going back to the airport in 6 weeks. Our next 2 weeks, I was a support person for those that went out. Finally, I surrendered my fears to God as He patiently reminded me I was allowing my lack of trust in Him to interfere with His work. The song kept coming to mind, "No water can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies." If I really trust that God lives in me, I'm okay wherever I am or whatever happens, even death. Besides, I don't want to be the survivor to pick up the pieces. I can't say I got in the car and experienced perfect peace, but I can say that I got in the car. I kept my eyes closed and prayed a lot, but praise God I was able to participate in all our outreach activities. The last night before we left, we went for a walk, and each of us gathered a rock of remembrance. My rock remains with my testimony that although the roads continued to bother me, they didn't control me.
And she was actually singing and had eyes open near the end and handling it very well. Whereas on the way in, we thought we were going to have to tranquilize her. So God answered a big prayer.
That's another story. I love and hate orphanages. I love the precious little gems that find shelter there, but I hate to see the innocent locked up in an institution. While in Ecuador, we had the opportunity to visit such a place. It was drizzling and cold as we waited for the large gate to be unlocked. We met the younger children in the orphanage church. There were about a baker's dozen, ranging in ages from 4 to 9, mostly boys. We had a fun time teaching and playing bells with them. Joshua had purchased little cars for the boys, and Swanee had gotten brightly colored socks for the girls. They had the privilege to experience firsthand that it is more blessed to give than to receive. We were given a tour of the older children's home. We met 6 young men and heard some of their stories, parents in jail, poverty, etc. One beautiful story we heard was of the young lady that volunteered there. She had grown up in that orphanage and now volunteers there because she feels she can relate to the young residents. That's making lemonade from your lemons. As we were leaving the orphanage, another beautiful story happened. My own little girl put her arms around my neck and said, "I'm so glad I didn't have to grow up in a place like this." Strange, she couldn't understand why I was crying. All right, last one. As Swanee reported, we visited many of the homes in our surrounding area. Everyone held a different element. Joy, sorrow, love, pain. We could see the fields of one community up the mountain from Don and Sherry's house. It was a mountain, and of course, it was up, so I secretly dreaded visiting there. I could only imagine what the drive would be like. When we finally went, it was already evening. Surprisingly, the road wasn't as bad as I had feared. Or maybe God was relieving my fear. Either way, when we arrived, a couple of families started gathering. By this time it was quite dark, so they turned on a single bulb on the porch of the small windowless home. We sang and prayed and made some pipe cleaner glasses for the children. Then they wanted to share with us. Someone appeared with 2 small, antique blue plastic cups and an old plastic jug filled with an amber liquid, likely made with canal water. We all entered an inward battle. After suffering so much sickness, no one wanted to take the chance of getting something 2 days before our journey home. The people poured the precious unknown liquid into those 2 antique blue plastic cups, and we understood we were to pass them around. I watched as, one by one, each passed the cup and then put it to their lips. When the infamous blue cup made it to me, at the end of my line, it was still full. No one had drunk any. The dear people's eyes were on me. There was no escape. I put the cup to my lips with a prayer, and that quick a promise flashed into my mind. And if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. I finished the contents and warmly thanked our host, handing back that antique blue plastic cup. God didn't give me that promise in the market or in the city when the food smelled or looked good and desire called, but when the hearts of his children poured out their best. What a treasured experience. And by the way, I didn't get sick. His promises are good.
Okay. There was one other story that we were going to share. This picture Swanee already showed you. There's a lady sitting here on the right in the white chair. She lived in the little village right close to where we were, and most of the activities that we had or did happened in that little village of Chiquille. But in some of the other villages, there were families and relations. And it just so happened we went to another village. This is a relative of that lady. You can see this man. He's tied in a wheelchair so he doesn't fall out. To the right is his bed. He's been in that wheelchair for 32 years. We're not sure what this disease is, but it starts out when the children are somewhere around 8, 10 years old. They start getting in their hips and knees this, it's almost when they start to walk, they kind of start to do that labored, kind of like a muscular dystrophy type walk. And then it seems to progress. And by the time they're in their late teens or early 20s, they migrate to a wheelchair. At 25, this gentleman went in the wheelchair. He was there for 32 years. By God's grace, I would say that between when we left and now, he just passed away, which I think was so merciful because he had no existence. I mean, it was just, it was so pathetic. It would break your heart. This was not even in the house. This was under a little lean-to kind of on the, outside of the house where you put your garden tools. That's where his bedroom was. He actually did have a little foam mat about this thick that was laying in the bushes. You can imagine that it gets dirty, and that was their way of cleaning it. They just let it lay in the sun during the day, and then they put it back on the bed and put him on it at night. And he goes back and forth every day, same thing, sits like that all day, in the bed all night. While we were there, Rhonda had the idea, if we could figure out, because that other lady back here, same situation. Others, young children, and even a girl from Vacation Bible School here on the right named Claudia. She's 18. She walked like that already, and we would, going up and down the hill, she didn't want to miss out, so somebody would give her an arm and help her to get up and down. And so Rhonda said, if we can figure out what's going on and help one of these people, that could help a whole community if we could figure out what's going on. So we still haven't figured it out, but that's one of the projects that's still going on right now. They have kind of narrowed it down. They thought it might be a beetle, but that Dr. Sonia that Caleb had mentioned, she had been to a couple of doctors. Blood work looked fine. They couldn't tell anything. And so we again took her to that Dr. Sonia. She did several different tests on her, and they're lining up with some specialists in Guayaquil and maybe even Quito or Cuenca to take her to do extensive more studies. The water that they drink from the canals is very poisoned, toxins. They dump, Ecuador tries to be very green in a lot of ways. One of those countries where GMO is not supposed to be allowed, and yet local people that don't know the difference dump everything in the river, and so it's quite contaminated. That's a very big factor. Another thing that they think might be related is genetics, and because everybody in that village is last name with the Hispanics, there's two last names, is usually Castillo Jimenez or Jimenez Castillo or Castillo Castillo or Jimenez Jimenez. So that tells you that there's not a lot happening in that village, and so there could be something there. Not a lot of people come or go. We're not exactly sure because all the people that seem to have it, there is a biological family relationship. So anyways, she was at the age in between. This was the village where a few years ago bad things were happening, but her parents have been most appreciative for what we're doing, and so Sherry is still going and picking her up. We were there the first time she came with us into town, went to the doctor, and they've been taking her back several times. And since then, that young girl, as well as this couple here, this gentleman and this lady on the right, the gentleman on the left, is a husband-wife, Salvador and Norma, I guess they have their name tags. He has cancer, and turns out she has cancer as well. Those three people right now are staying in the home where we stayed in and going through a lifestyle program. So they're doing a lot with just, the 8 laws of health and things like that. And so they were very appreciative of the work that was done to help get the place ready because they have 3 guests there and they're still there. They came a couple weeks ago. The girl came for the first week and then the couple came and joined them. And they've gone and had blood work and done the stuff and to kind of see what they're dealing with. The cancer is pretty far advanced on this gentleman. So he is in a rough way, but God is a big God and He can take care of that. Just a couple of things. Just in closing, the last little thing, it is a big, big Catholic country down there. And Rhonda read something last night, and there's still a couple minutes. I don't know if you know that the Pope is doing a 3-country tour right now. Ecuador was the first one. He went and spoke down there. And now there's 11 commandments. Have you guys heard that? How many of you have heard that, in years gone by, the Catholic Church altered the commandments somewhat? We took and got rid of the second one, and then we changed kind of the way the 4th one is laid out and what it means, and the 10th one we split, or the 9th one now is 9th and 10th. So they're in a different order. Well, he at the big, huge mass that he just held in Ecuador, he announced there's addition of 2 more commandments. One of them is that GMO food is not good. Well, I can agree with the philosophy, the principle, but to make it a commandment of God and to usurp the authority to add that to God's commandments. And the second one was that selfies or pictures with your phone are wrong. Those are the 2 commandments that he added. But he also went another step further. He said the 4th commandment, dealing with your parents, and of course if you take number 2 out, then what used to be the 5th backs up to 4. Honor thy father and thy mother now is to be not father and mother because it also applies for same-sex marriage parents. And so we need to honor same-sex marriage parents as well. And honor your parents whether they're the same gender or not. And the second thing is that the 6th commandment, which used to be the 7th commandment, adultery, now that's the one they've done away with. So they added 2 to make it 12, but they took number 7 out altogether. So the adultery is okay now, fornication of any kind is okay, and they took that out so that there's no adverse effects to same-sex relationships. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So that's a very big side note from our thing, but we see that the first country on this tour was Ecuador. And even though it's a Catholic country, in the communities where we were, like I said, there's very little influence. But yet when somebody like that comes along and makes those proclamations, it seems to have a worldwide impact even on those little communities. So we're praying for Ecuador as well as this country, and God's truth, because God is bigger and we want His truth to prevail. typical confessions. It was amazing. We went in some of these basilicas because we don't have them here in this country, and so we took the children inside to show them some of what's going on, and it was interesting. Just a couple other pictures. Right after the orphanage, we went to a park across the street, and it was kind of neat. There was some fun experiences. You know, we told Swanee she just got her driver's license. This is the kind of car we're going to get her. And the swings and a few other things. But this is our last Sabbath breakfast morning there before we left. It was a beautiful place in a lot of ways. Here we were saying goodbye to our friends and the mayor. He accompanied us too. He did a lot of the driving for us down there to the airport. You can see Mr. Don and Miss Sherry there. They were. We said our goodbyes, and we hopped on the airplane. You know, it seems like we had all kind of trials going down. But on the return trip, we were a little bit late leaving, but and a miracle too. Of all the 16 bags and all those plane changings, we didn't lose a single thing on the way down. Of course, going back, we were a lot later luggage. The young people became very good. Rhonda and I didn't have to do anything. They knew what to do. It was, they became all too familiar with airports. But all the luggage, here we were back in Dallas, Texas, and we made it home by God's grace. But we want to share a song with you. It was a song, like Swanee said, when we did all those homes, we had 3 songs that we would sing. But the mayor, there was one that was his all-time favorite, and so if ever there was a question or any doubt as to what song we should sing, he was more than happy to recommend One Day at a Time, which is a song I'm sure you've heard before. So come on up. This was a song we sang at most of the homes. We would visit with them, we would have prayer with them, and sing this song with them, and of course do the pipe cleaners. And so we're going to sing it for you. We're going to go ahead and sing it in Spanish if that's okay, but you might recognize the tune. Yeah, and so we just read that last night, so check that out. What I told you about the Catholic, the Pope's visit. I heard that he's making this tour, but supposedly they got some sculptor in Italy who's etching out new commandments and everything, so it'll be very interesting to see how that actually comes about.
Señor, ayúdame, yo quiero saber lo que debo hacer. Muestra el camino que debo seguir. Señor, por mi bien, yo quiero vivir un día a la vez. Un día a la vez, mi Cristo, es lo que pido de ti. Dame la fuerza para vivir un día a la vez. Ella pasó, mi Cristo, y mañana quizás no vendrá. Ayúdame hoy, yo quiero vivir un día a la vez. Tú ya veniste entre los hombres. Tú sabes, Señor, que hoy está peor, es mucho el dolor. Hay mucho egoísmo y mucha maldad. Señor, por mi bien, yo quiero vivir un día a la vez. Un día un día a la vez. Ay, ella pasó, mi Cristo, y mañana quizás no vendrá. Ayúdame hoy, yo quiero vivir un día a la vez. Ayúdame hoy, yo quiero vivir un día a la vez.
I just want to close with one last scripture passage. It's one you guys have heard before, but it's always worth repeating. Matthew 25. And I should have blown this up bigger so I could see it. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all his holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, and the goats on his left. Then shall the king say to them on the right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was a-hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? Excuse me. When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. You know, I don't know that all of us have had or will have, and even for us, the privilege to go to some place like Ecuador or some of these other countries. But you know, there's always those souls around us. And every one of them is Christ in human form, and someone that we can minister to. Someone who has physical needs, sickness and suffering. Every heart has its sorrow. And of course, the spiritual needs. And so I would just challenge you and my own family from our experience that we had, where we had this opportunity, to take these opportunities that come your way, to share God's love, and to do for them as if you were doing it for Jesus.